my audience, Matt and Olivia, Crystal, and my mom, Holly. Hey. All right. So, on average, there are 20 people that die a day waiting for an organ transplant. That's equivalent to 20 jumbo jets that fall to the ground in a year with no survivors. If the FAA started investigating why these planes were crashing and they found out that the only way that they would be able to save those people was for a simple signature by each member, they would demand action. UNOS that stands for United Network for Organ Sharing. They have statistics of how many people in the United States today are waiting for organ transplants. And that's 114,933 people. Did you know that if one person chose to become an organ donor, they could possibly save 8 different people's lives? Now that I've grabbed your attention, the 3 topics that I'm going to be talking about for organ donation is the background and what exactly organ donation is, the myths about organ donation, and also how you can become an organ donor. So what's organ donation? The proper term of organ donation is from the Cleveland Clinic. It's the process of surgically removing an organ from a donor and then transplanting it in to a recipient, which is the person that their organ or tissue is no longer viable or working properly. We remove that and put in a new organ or tissue. So when you think about organ donation, you automatically think about those major organs. You think about the spleen, liver, kidneys, heart, lungs. But there's also other things that people don't think about when coming to organ donation. You can do bone marrow, tissue, corneas, and even blood whenever you donate blood. With medicine constantly evolving, there's many different things you can do for organ transplant. There's even new research where they can possibly remove, say someone is a veteran and they come home from war and they no longer have a hand, or someone is working in a warehouse and they shred their hand. They can now transplant a new hand onto that patient and they can have full function of that hand again, almost exactly to their hand that's already onto their body. They just connect the blood vessels, the tendons, and the bone back together, and they have a brand new working hand instead of using a prosthetic. There was also a story a couple years ago where a gentleman had tried to commit suicide, and he actually ended up blowing majority of his face off from trying to commit that suicide. And they ended up actually being able to transplant a face onto that gentleman to give him another life, for him to be able to get a job and be able to be a stand-up citizen of society. So the myths about organ donation. As a nurse, I come in contact with that a lot. Whenever I'm admitting a patient onto the floor, the first question that I normally ask them is, are you an organ donor? A lot of people's response are, nobody wants my organs anyways, I'm too young, or I'm too old. There's many things that people respond to as why their excuses for not being an organ donor. So I'm going to try to put some of those myths to rest with you today. One thing is that you're never too old to be an organ donor. There's no age limit to organ donation. There's plenty of viable things that you can offer a life. Say someone is in a house fire. They have burns all over their body. There can be a 99-year-old that was an organ donor that was able to actually give tissue to that burn victim, and they have new tissue now all over their body. And they're able actually to not be in pain anymore than when they had those burns and open wounds all over their body. A lot of people think that because they have a chronic illness or a past history of cancer, that they can't be an organ donor either. That's not true. There's a lot of things that go through organ donation whenever somebody decides to be an organ donor. And just because you've had a past history of cancer doesn't mean that you don't have anything that's viable to donate. This is one thing that I hear a lot in the hospital as well. A lot of people think because if you decide to be an organ donor, that if you come into a hospital and you're actively dying, that we're not going to save you. We're not going to do anything to help you. We're not going to help your illness, your sickness. We're just going to let you die pretty much so that we can take your organs and give it to somebody else. I promise you it's not true. When somebody is dying, and the first thing that we think about are two different things. If they're a full code, which means you want us to do chest compressions, CPR, and you want us to intubate you and help you breathing. Or if you're a DNR, which means do not resuscitate, you don't want us to do CPR, intubation, which is a tube that goes into your throat to help you breathe, or any medications to help your heart start pumping again. So those are the things that we look at whenever you are actively dying to see if you want us to help you or not. Now, after a patient does end up passing and we do everything in our power to help that patient, is when we start looking into if that patient is an organ donor and what we can do to help others with this now patient that has passed. The last thing with myths that I'm going to talk to you about is religion. That's another thing that I get. A lot of patients say, my religion doesn't allow me to be an organ donor, or I would. Now, there's actually been a study, it's called Finger Network Donations. They've done research on all religions and has compared every sort of aspect of their religion to see if there is a reason as to why you would not be able to be an organ donor. And it is not true. So a lot of people think the first religion that you think of is Jehovah's Witnesses, because they can't receive blood products. They even allow for organ donation and to receive organ donations as long as the blood is drained out of that organ to give to another patient or to receive for them. So if you are thinking about organ donation but aren't quite sure about the religion aspect, just ask any clergy in your church about further education. This is what this is all about. Just educate yourself on the topic instead of just making an excuse as to why you don't want to become an organ donor. So the last thing that I'm going to talk to you about is I give you all this information and hopefully I have persuaded you enough to think about becoming an organ donor. So there's two different ways that you can become an organ donor. When you go to renew your license and you go to the DMV, they ask you every time that you go to renew your license, do you want to be an organ donor? All you have to do is click a box. That's all it is. It goes onto your license saying that you're an organ donor. It's as simple as that. You can also go to organdonor.gov, and there is a website, which I'm going to show you now. So organdonor.gov, all you're going to do is scroll down to select state. You're going to select your state. You're going to hit go, and then click to continue. And then you're going to just choose to become an organ donor. All you have to do is put in your driver's license number or photo ID. You don't need a driver's license to become an organ donor, your date of birth, and your social security number. And then all you have to do is hit login, and it automatically makes you an organ donor. Now, at that last option, you can choose to get a card sent to you in a mail that you can put onto your license, so that way if you are in an accident or anything like that, the paramedics will automatically know that you are an organ donor, and you can help save a life at that point. So lastly, I'm going to close with a poem from S. Todd. When I'm gone and no longer around, when you've buried my body deep in the ground, I hope you've listened to what I have said. My organs are really no use when I am dead. Take them all out, share them around, shout from the rooftops, a donor we found. My liver, my kidneys, my lungs, and my heart, just a few things to give someone a start. Thank you.